Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
This is Justin West from Podcast Portugal. I'd like to take this moment to extend a very warm welcome to Heitor Carvalho. And Heitor, I'm really apology on my accent if I didn't quite get it right. Very welcome. This is his subject. Heitor is a documentarian, and he's got various projects which are related to something very, very close to my heart. It's all about regenerative living and sort of looking back to the rural areas, particularly in Portugal. We have so many areas of this country which needs a little bit of a spotlight put on and has so much potential. And in this world, we seem to be all crying out for new ways of living and investigating these things. And I personally, we live on a. I can explain a little bit to you, Heitor, first, because you perhaps will sort of resonate with this. I'm living on a farm in the Aldeias that we bought. A very, not a big piece of land, not a renovation project basically with the house. But we moved here simply to have space, to create some kind of future for my son in an unpredictable future. I always believed in I've had this belief for a long time, since I was 20 years old, that it's important to, if you can afford it, to own a piece of land and to have that security of growing your own food, that knowledge of having your own water that you can treat, and having a shelter, the basics: food, water, shelter. And once you have this, then you can concentrate on doing other things and maybe be more proactive in your community to help others. We have some fantastic neighbors here. I've said it time and time again on Podcast Portugal. Our neighbors, we have an old farming couple and their son that live next door. Fantastic people, warm, just amazingly helpful. If we go away for a few days, I see them on the security cameras. They don't even know that we have security cameras, I don't think. We see them on the security cameras. They come around, they check our dogs, and they just look around the property. One time he mowed my lawn for me whilst we were away for a few days, it's just, I think, a good example of what rural living can be like, especially in Portugal with the warm nature of the people here. Sorry, Heitor, I went on as usual, and a big warm welcome to you. And maybe tell us a little bit who you are, what you do, and why it's such a fantastic moment to talk today.
Thank you so much, Justin. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm a movie director, documentarist, currently also very interested in regenerative living, storytelling, and cultural narrative, weaving into this kind of movement that's happening of a lot of people that are disillusioned with the stories that we were told about what a good life was, what success was, and like getting a good job in a big city, in a big company, and having all that lifestyle that was sold, and that we lost the basics as humanity. We forgot what was, like you were saying, the most essential needs, which actually are fulfilling to a deeper layer of ourselves beyond just the superficial status and money that are sold in mainstream society. Having a connection with the land, connection with the people, a sense of belonging to a place, a sense of purpose in your work, a sense that you're here, you're meant to do something, you belong to the earth and you belong to a community, also through just who you are, but also through what you can also contribute to. And through the making of the documentary Villages of the Future, which was following this regenerative Re.Rural movement in Portugal, I came across many regenerative projects, initiatives, communities, neighborhoods that are reimagining the ways that we relate to one another, that we relate to our work, that we relate to the land, that we relate to each other, um, and ultimately to the nature of who we are and what we're here to do. And this has been done in villages. So these rural areas are, I see, laboratories of the future. They're truly places where we can reimagine and practice again what it means to be human, what it means to be in connection, in relationship. Um, and so, yeah, this has really expanded a lot of possibilities, and I'm excited to talk about also some of the nuances, some of the complexities of what came through with the making of the documentary, and also understanding that there are some possibilities for conflicts in these dynamics of moving to the countryside.
Mhm.
And there's also a lot of potential for creating truly new ways of living that are actually very ancient, that are actually very old.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, from my own personal experience, Portugal is almost perfectly positioned for this. We have some of the most affordable land I can probably guess in most of Europe. You have a fantastic climate for growing food. In my area, particularly, we have great soil. It's our land was not touched for 20 years, so we don't have we can. I mean, we don't have an organic license or anything like that because we're not a commercial farm, but we're growing our own food, and I can safely test the land, and it hasn't got necessarily too many chemicals and things like this. But it's look, it's it's a romantic and beautiful idea. It is for idealists. I have been an idealist. I've always had this romantic. I've been a sheep farmer in Cornwall. It wasn't my own land, so I didn't. And living in UK and the weather and types of things like this, it makes this type of living that little bit harder because you need certain infrastructures that cost money. Um, it's a little bit easier in Portugal, but I would not say that this type of living is uh, is easy. There is a reason why you have a migration of peoples from the countryside traditionally in the old world and the new world even that move to the cities for uh, quotation marks better prospects, better careers to earn more money, which I think is an interesting and useful path for people. I think like when you're young, you can fail. I think you should go out there, you should go travel, you should go do different jobs, you should work in the city, you should work in the countryside. I think it's a moment in your life for experimentation and learning and getting your hands dirty. Um, and also, I think it's important that you understand something about the value of money and to create a little bit, I mean, you might disagree with me on this, but to create a little bit of capital, because this is going to make this ambition for then returning to the countryside much easier. Because I don't recommend anybody get a mortgage to buy land or buy a house because immediately you're almost trapped into that cycle. You also have to make a lot of considerations because setting up regenerative farming, doing something like this is not cheap. Just things like that we didn't expect when we moved here. I mean, we have total solar, but it's expensive, and you have to have money to set these kind of things up. And once you've set them up, then you can be more cost effective over the long run. But it is. I'm trying to think what I'm saying here. I think it's important when you're young, go out there, get experience. Earn as much money as you can, spend as little as you can, because that money you can put into your new lifestyle living projects and build communities, and you can set yourself up a little bit with practical things like solar and water treatment and things like this, which are going to serve you for a long period of time. Don't waste it on a Ferrari, Don't, well, or you can if you want, if you have enough. But think about long-term value things, and I think is possibly what some of the things that you're going to talk about, right?
Mm. Yeah, I feel like it's interesting you brought the issue of capital so early on, because one of the things that I feel our society has gotten completely wrong is to think that there's just one type of capital. We reduced capital to the financial capital. And many times we fight and we hustle to acquire as much of this as possible, as much money as possible, at the expense and sacrificing other types of capital, like the social capital, cultural capital, ecological capital, and so many others. And I think this is one of the things that has been that is actually very much more present in a village. And here I'm not talking about the rural areas where you're isolated in your own piece of land with one or two neighbors around. I'm talking about a village life, which is in a rural area, but there's a lot more diversity and a lot more neighbors. And so there's a neighborhood. And I think, just like you said, your neighbor would come and mow your lawn just because it was something to do. There is a lot more of this solidarity economics present in a village if that village is vibrant and cohesive and resilient, and there's actually social bonds being made and cultural bonds. I think that's something that in the Portuguese culture we still have very strongly, this idea of uh, interconnection and mutual help, mutual support within a village. And so I don't necessarily agree with the idea of go out there and make as much money as you can. I understand that it's important to know the language of capital. And at the same time, I think that, and this is, of course, a big debate and it doesn't necessarily have a conclusion, but I I do sense that this narrative of go make as much money as possible is exactly what's destroying the planet and many of the bonds and connections of cultural capital, social capital, ecological capital that are actually fulfilling from the start. And of course, if you're young, it's great to travel, it's great to try different jobs, it's great to try different things to really see what works for you. But ultimately, what is that all for eventually? I'm very young, I'm 25. Most people my age are still going on, let's go travel more and look for new things and new possibilities. And for me, this last year has been the learning of actually, I've seen a lot. I still want to travel more, but I've traveled a lot since I'm 16. I've tried many different things. And now what I'm being called for is actually for landing, for commitment, for rooting to a place, to a community, because this is again another conversation, but many of the things, many of the a great part of the narrative that's being pushed to the new generation is this idea of free location independence and financial independence, and this idea of full independence, full freedom. You can travel wherever you want, you can travel, work from wherever you want, and then people sense a lack of purpose, a lack of belonging. So the digital nomads are looking for they can travel whenever they want, they can live wherever they want, but then they don't belong to any place, they don't belong to any community. So this is one of the major things of this generation, is that people are lonely and they're looking for community, they're looking for belonging, but they end up connecting with people who are in the same situation of not belonging anywhere, working remote somewhere in a paradisiac country, either in Bali or in Costa Rica or in Guatemala or in Tulum. And Portugal is actually becoming one of these places that attracts a lot of digital nomads, attracts a lot of foreign capital, which of course is great to revitalize the economy, to value the land, to bring new dynamics. And at the same time, when you say that the lands in Portugal are affordable, it's mostly affordable to foreign people that come with that capital.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, many of the Portuguese locals are being pushed out due to gentrification. And me being a Portuguese person, I mean, I was born in Portugal, therefore I'm Portuguese. I don't really identify so much with any nationality. I've traveled a lot, but I do sense that many people that were born here are being pushed out. And many of the young people, I think 30% of young people, be like until I think 30, 35 years old, uh, are going to work abroad right now. Um, so we have 1/3 of the Portuguese youth that is going to Germany, to the Netherlands, to Australia, to Switzerland, to feed the same economies, that then that money rises to the top, and then the people who have that capital, the CEOs and etc., they come and they actually buy Portuguese land. And what's happening is this, unfortunately, it's that Portugal as a culture, as a people, is it's going through a big transformation. Um, I sense that there's positive aspects to that. I have nothing against international uh, people. I really love, most of my friends are also international. The issue is when this is not named, when this is not even talked about, when there's so-called conscious communities and regenerative communities trying to create new ways of life, but then they're not talking about class privilege, they're not talking about gentrification. And I used to pass through the same things when I was traveling. I went to India, to Goa, for example, and I could see how me being there, I had so much purchasing power just because of my European money, just because of the euro, and I could get a meal for €2 or €3. But I wasn't thinking about how that was impacting the local economy, and how local people in Goa were becoming completely dependent on tourism, and then they end up being the servants of the rich, white, privileged tourists that go there. And Portugal is now going through a very similar transition. And so these are some of the issues that I also want to bring up, because they need to be talked about, and we need to see how can we actually put that financial capital, which fortunately many of these countries that have this capacity, Switzerland and Germany, also the UK in some ways, then because you have that capacity to talk that language, the language of capital, of financial capital, uh, there can be a big support towards the land and towards the local cultures. There can be a valuing of it. It's not either or, it's like how it's both and more, right? So my biggest question is like, how can we build bridges between international communities that come to Portugal and see, wow, this is a land of opportunity, we can get a cheap land and we can have more regenerative lifestyle, and the local people that have been living there for so long and they somehow are being forgotten in the process. So building these bridges, I feel it's super important.
Yeah. I mean, I can only speak from my own personal experience when I look around my area here, it is mostly old people. There is buildings that are abandoned, farmland which is just going to the weeds. So I don't feel that my presence here has replaced anybody. Perhaps, if I was living in Ericeira or previously, or I was living in the Algarve or Lagos, I can imagine that my ability to rent an apartment for a certain value was difficult for other people, because I would take that apartment because I could afford it. That meant somebody else couldn't afford it, and that the renter was putting up prices generally to attract persons that could afford it. So I can feel that. But then I also have this other feeling, and this is quite interesting because you're talking about these villages, rural villages, and I also have this feeling in Portugal that there is opportunity not just for international people, but there's also opportunities for the Portuguese to move back to the rural communities. If I look around my area now, you'll see it's mostly farm laborers, farm managers who tend to be Portuguese. The laborers will be either Eastern European or from India. And then you'll have the owners. There is a class here of landowners which are a little bit more wealthy. And that tends to be the strat. And then there's a lot of very old people that are just sort of retiring, who used to work on the land, like picking tomatoes and growing tomatoes and things. but we're missing a young generation here.
Yes.
And this, I think, and there is possibility here. There is work. There is reasons why there is 200 Indians that were living very local to us that were picking olives and picking fruit. They're making above a minimum wage doing this fruit picking. So it's not that the opportunity for work is not here. There is not that the opportunity for housing is not here either, because there is properties. Okay, they need work. That takes, unfortunately, like we're talking about, that takes some capital, that takes some investment to put a roof on a house. And it's how do we get these young people to say, come back and live in Alentejo, renovate this house, be part of the community in the village here. You have work. Okay, maybe it's not the most ideal work at the moment, but you can. There is opportunity for sustenance.
Yes.
And perhaps you don't need to go and work abroad in a tech company or whatever, or maybe you can and then return, or it's like, how do we tell this story? And I think that's probably what your documentary is really trying to express, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the documentary comes as a deep need, from a personal need to understand, also for myself, how more amazing life could be if we are repairing these bonds that we forgot in the last generation with the land, with nature, and also with community, with a real sense of I belong to these people, and we're all different, but somehow there's a sense of familiarity. And that was something that I could really sense, the difference between the city, where we are surrounded by people, but we don't look people in the eyes, we don't smile to each other, we don't say hello, uh, because it's too much. Like, our brains are just not wired to be surrounded by so much information, by so many people, and so we need to close. We need, as a protection mechanism, it's natural. But since I came to this village in the south, also in Alentejo, um, I was looking for something. I was looking for projects, I was looking for initiatives, I was looking for communities, and I found this one. And there was something very special about this one, because instead of being like a closed off intentional community, like an eco village where people are living together for a specific purpose, but then it ends up being a little bit self-centered and a little bit like a bubble. um I w- in this case, it was a whole village, and the village felt open to outside, and there was a lot of, it was more porous. There was things coming in, things coming out. There was a lot of diversity, and there was a sense of familiarity with the people. It was not too big that it becomes unmanageable. It was also not too small that you felt like, this, there's nothing happening here, I need to leave and go somewhere else. So it was a very interesting balance of like walking in the street and seeing some faces that you recognize, and you might not have talked with these people before, but there's a sense of mutuality, there's a sense of familiarity, which just relaxes our nervous system, and having this feeling of like, I'm safe, I'm at home, I know these people, even if they're completely different from me. There's that sense in a village. And also, you can go very deep and create deeper bonds with people, because you have more time, you have more presence with some of these people, some proximity, and also more continuity through time. And I think this segues into exactly what you asked now, which is like how to attract young people to the countryside. And one of the big issues, I would say, is that it's in the mindset, it's in the culture, it's what we were told, the stories about what it means to live a good life. We were sold these images of the kind of hustle entrepreneur, or the kind of freedom seeker, adventure seeker, which there's absolutely nothing wrong in that per se. It's just when that is corrupting very simple values that are actually fulfilling, like eating healthy, having a sense of belonging to a place and to community, having connection with the older generations, with family ties, with a sort of like lineage, a sense of belonging to something bigger than oneself, and with this kind of seeking of the individualist's dream. We have become disconnected from that, and many young people are seeking that still. They're going somewhere, and also this idea that we can travel anywhere, we can go anywhere. Then we're just gonna keep going, looking for something out there, forgetting that we had it in ourselves all along. And as a Portuguese person, I really feel that since very young, I didn't care about Portugal at all. I wasn't interested to speak Portuguese. I wasn't interested to know anything about tradition and culture, because I just wanted to move away. I just wanted to go somewhere else in Europe, somewhere else in the world. I wanted to explore and learn. I think that's very healthy. But there was something missing every time. There was something missing. And I'm finding that that is a sense of continuity, commitment, a sense of roots, a sense of speaking the language that has been spoken for generations and generations and generations in these lands. Um, so there's some of that. I feel like part of the documentary is trying to make village life sexy again, in a way, for young people to feel attracted to come back. But at the same time, it's definitely not an easy path. Like I believe no path is easy. There will one of the sentences, one of the quotes of the documentary is that um, harsh conditions, like a hard life, you will find it anywhere. It's hard in the city, like it's hard in the countryside. But the harshness of the city weakens us. It makes us weak, while the harshness of the countryside actually strengthens us, because it gives us this sense of capacity, this sense of power, this sense of sovereignty, of autonomy, being able to grow our own food, being able to be in connection with our sustenance, right? um, and so, yeah, I believe it's not just a matter of creating the right conditions, which is very important, like the right political conditions to for work, possibilities for housing opportunities, but it's mostly cultural. It's mostly the storyline, and that's what the documentary is also trying to address: is this cultural narrative of what it means to live a good life, and also seeing countryside, country life, the land as the most interesting place right now for young people to reimagine themselves, to recreate um, where they want to live, with whom they want to live, doing what. I feel like this is a land of possibility.
What you're saying is not a news story. It's part of our DNA. It's part of our ancestral history. I think the Industrial Revolution was, 1780s or something like that, when the powers that be decided that we needed factories and cities, and we needed to have workers literally in those cities. Then they sold people the dream to go and work themselves and their children to death in factories. And I always pondered this. I always thought, like, why would they have left the countryside where they would have done probably the same amount of labor, but eaten or lived in much cleaner, I guess you could say, conditions than you would do in the slums of the factory housing estates that they built for literally, and people, and this continues. It continues the rest of the world in other cities in India, like you were talking about Goa. People are often leaving the villages. I have a very good friend of mine. He's a Harvard mathematician, and his father is also a physicist, and they grew up in a very small village in India. And he always sang to me how healthy his grandparents are. They literally eat yogurt every day from their cows, and he was saying like how they work, but they're so strong, so healthy. They look much younger. And I think, and I wonder to myself, like, how did we get convinced that working in a factory would be a good idea? And this type of mentality has continued through the generations, and
Yes.
it's still apparent today. And I think right now we're at this juxtaposition, and I think you would agree that technology, in many ways, we've got to a state with technology that it's enabling us to be able to learn how to be a farmer. It now we have so much information online through technology, and I do also speak to my neighbors, like you were saying, to the older generation, to learn, because you can't just show up in the countryside and show up at a community without having anything to contribute. I mean, you can, but I think a community is always stronger when you come and you have something that you can offer other people. You're not just there to take. And I think, the technology moment is that we can learn how to be farmers. We can learn about machinery. We can learn about how to dig something and what tool to use with our hands, when to plant, how to irrigate. There's so much information there that I think it's making it much more accessible to live in this way. I think that is a bonus. The only thing that I do have to say is that somebody and some area of the world is going to be having to keep generating products, and there has to still be part of this global system where technology advances in designs, because somebody has got to build and manufacture the solar panels that we live and create clean energy with. Somebody has to design and sell the shovel that you shovel your homemade compost with. And this is the difficulty, right? It's like how do we make the most of what society and what the wider world provides us with technologically, in terms of product? These are all based around capital. Somebody has to go and work and do these things and create these products and make them more efficient, because then when we want to live in these rural communities, we can benefit. We benefit from solar. We benefit from making our properties more insulating, or we benefit by having better irrigation systems that save water. It's how do we make that balance, do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. I will try to. Yeah, I feel like once we start to zoom out and see that we are in fact belonging to a web of interconnected relationships, which are intrinsically interdependent. They all depend on each other. They all uh, need each other to thrive. Of course, at the same time, we have outsourced a lot of the work that we could do locally. So most of these villages, 90% of these villages in Portugal were completely self-sufficient. Um, so they could meet all their basic needs directly just from the earth, their basic food needs, also the clothes. The issue is that we have also accelerated beyond the limits of the planet itself our energetic needs. So there's this idea that I need the new iPhone or the new car or the new thing, the new gadgets, more clothes, more things. So it's true that we are just consuming way more than we actually need, and than what is actually healthy, and then what is actually fulfilling. This idea of needing more and more. And actually, if we start to look at what we actually need, we start to realize that there's so much abundance of resources where we are already. Everything is already around us. There's already a lot of things that can be used again, that can be repurposed. And in the global south, which is called sometimes developing world, we see this a lot, where because people don't have access to so much, they are more inventive. They are more they improvise with what they have, and they can actually create very very intricate and very smart technologies with very simple and basic items. So there is also this sense of degrowth, of doing more with less, of not needing to consume so much as well. I think this is part of the lifestyle that the countryside starts like just naturally um, asks from us, is also a sense of feeling content with less, of having less stuff and more time to enjoy with the people that we love. And of course, we are still connected with this global economy, with geopolitics. We're not separate from that. However, we are way more sovereign than we are sometimes led to believe. We are way more autonomous than what the powers that be wants us to believe. When we look in the TV, we really think that we are all being governed by this mass uh, millionaire program, billionaire ideas, and all of this. But actually, if we start to look around and connect with our neighbors and start to build things locally, we start to realize that we have a lot more capacity and power than we think. And I think this is also part of getting back to the localism, to the autonomy of the group, of the place where we are at. And then we don't need to outsource so much. We don't need to import so much from abroad. It's actually crazy when we start to see how much we import and export from different countries of things that we could just very easily produce in our own lands. Um, so
No,
yeah.
I agree with you there. I agree with you on many of those points. I mean, the supply chain is just absolutely crazy, and you can see that it's a massive weakness in society as well. When you have the Strait of Hormuz can be held as hijacked and held to ransom. By whoever. It could be US, it could be Iran, whoever the players are, it doesn't really matter. The fact that we are so reliant as a society and as a consumer society, so extreme that we're relying on a small stretch of water and a few ships to pass through there, that we are, we feel it in all of our pockets with the fuel prices. I feel it with my other job that I do where I travel a lot. And it has knock-on effects. We are part of this massive web of intricate connections, and I think there is global politics, and my advice to people when it comes to that is just switch off your device.
Yeah.
Don't have a TV. Switch off your device. Restrict it to just to work or to information gathering that you need. And just speak with your local community. That's enough gossip for me. It's my neighbors. And I agree with you fully that we are living in an extreme time that we do not need to keep. We don't. I mean, my iPhone is. I do have an iPhone, but my iPhone is very old. It's smashed. I've had it repaired several times. I've had new batteries put in it many times. But I think that is probably what people who are probably realizing that this is a little bit extreme, and then there is steps that they could pull back and be a little bit more balanced. It's not necessary to keep buying the new thing every year, but I'm also a little bit of a generation whereby now I'm 53. For me, I work. I don't have much machinery to work my farm. I do a lot of it by hand. And when I wake up in the morning and I'm sore, it's a good sore because I know that, and I feel good at the end of the day. That feeling of working in the fields, breathing, physical exertion, looking around me and being satisfied with what I've done, and that is, you cannot. I mean, I think this is exactly what you're saying. You cannot quantify that feeling that you get, that sense of satisfaction for, and it's not. And I've worked both manual laboring for myself and for others. Now, when I'm doing it for others, when I know that they're appreciative and it's helping like a community thing, it feels different. But if I'm doing it simply for an organization that is paying me, it's transactional and they're paying me a small amount of money to do it, I don't feel the same way. And I think these are subtleties and nuances that I think you opened with in what you were going to talk about. These are the nuances that I think we're facing. And we're at the dawn of a new era as well, where we can have this interconnectivity and perhaps we could have these things produced more locally. We can certainly encourage people to buy more locally. The food markets in Portugal are fantastic, and yet we still seem to be going to the local supermarkets, which I don't understand. But also with the advent of robotics and with AI, how do you see this playing into it? Because we could get a lot of these things made and created. Perhaps we can be asking AI how to do it in a more sustainable way and to make things which last longer. And this might free up people's time to live in ways and to return to the village and to have more time for each other and community rather than having to work or have that sort of pressure. Because it is a pressure. I'm 53 years old. I'm looking at retirement. I'm looking at, how am I going to continue to live in the way I want to? I don't spend very much money. But what if I get sick? What if I can't, go out every day and feed my chickens or work the land? What happens then? I need to have insurance, and then you're coming back. Then I need to have a car to get to the hospital, and you're coming back into this kind of structural society. It's pulling you back in from the ideal, right? So I think in the way we have to work, it's always a little bit of a balance, and I think I agree with you. Right now, it's extreme. We cannot also return to the days pre-industrial revolution where we're all suffering on laboring on farms, or maybe we can. I don't know. I never lived those days. I don't know what they felt like. But when you look at the data, life expectancy was very short. Births, birth and reproduction. Many families lost children in very difficult circumstances. So, but maybe that's what we are led to believe. I mean, who controls that data?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack there. I would like to start with, before going to AI, with just the mindset behind wanting to make everything efficient. Is exactly what got us into where we are. I don't know exactly when. I think it was the European Union in the past. I would say I think it happened around. I'm not gonna say it because then I'm wrong. So I just know that it happened within the last 100 years or 50 years. That the European Union decided, instead of having each country have their full sovereignty of producing whatever is native to those lands, let's systemize everything. Let's reduce it and make it very clear. So Germany is gonna be the producer of potatoes, or Portugal is gonna be the producer of hay. The France is gonna be the producer of X, Y, and Z. Don't take any of the examples I gave you on this because they're probably not correct. But the idea behind it is let's segmentize production so that each country is going to be um, responsible to produce a certain type of crop, and then we're going to be shipping it all over. And the idea was actually quite noble. It's to create a sense of interdependency. It's like, okay, we actually need each other because everyone is producing something different. But what ended up happening with that is that we have like many major like monocultures that are completely unsustainable. The only way to sustain them is with pesticides, because they are not resilient ecosystems. They are very prone to plagues. If you have a land full of one crop, if a plague catches one side, it can rip the whole thing down. And that's why you need to constantly be spraying it with chemicals, which are poison, which we put in our food, and then we eat this food. And it completely degrades the soil, it degrades the connection with the land, and it also degrades the social bonds because people are not connected with what they're doing. It's all machine based. It's all of this. What I'm trying to bring is that all of that comes from the mindset of let's make everything super efficient. It needs to be efficient, it needs to be lean, reduce redundancy. So the thing is, nature is full of redundancy. Nature is full of um, uh, elements that perform many functions, and also elements that perform similar functions to other elements, so that if one of the elements is failing, the other one takes it on. But we've tried to specialize everyone. There's instead of the master healer that would know astrophysics, he would know biology, you would know chemistry, you would know philosophy, you would know relation. Like now we have the specialist of the knee. Like I went to the doctor because I had pain in my knee, and they sent me to the doctor of the knee, and the doctor of the knee did some X-ray on my knee and said your knee is fine. Like, why do I have pain then? Well, I don't know. There's nothing here. Here's some painkillers. Go buy some in the fucking pharmacy. I just don't know if I can swear, but you can bleep.
No, fine. No, it's good.
So it's like we've just it's in the name of progress, in the name of efficiency, we have completely degraded our social bonds, our ecological bonds. So there is something about some kind of being reliant on something else than this system, and then of course bringing AI into this. I think that AI is not neutral because it is about who is financing it and what are the databases that are being used to train the data. But as a technology, it's of course very promising. It can revolutionize how we deal with work. It could tackle the most boring human tasks so that we can focus on relationships, so we can focus on leisure, so we can focus on creativity, art, culture. And of course, that's probably not the priority right now of the major investors into AI. They're trying to, instead of using AI to create a complete new system altogether, they're using it to optimize a system that's already absolutely unsustainable and that's naturally collapsing, because that's just how it is. And we don't even need to fight the system anymore. It's just naturally unraveling like any organic system does, and every rise and fall of civilizations has ever done. So I feel like AI right now is actually accelerating the decay, like the fall of this system. And eventually I see that as a natural evolution of things. And I believe, yes, AI will eventually be used in a way more harmonious way, more conscious way, more ecological and regenerative way. And also, yeah, we also, another thing I want to bring to close this point is that we don't necessarily need to just completely transition from one state to the next. Like we were in this system that is clearly like not working anymore. We're getting to its extremes. People are tired of it. Let's just completely get out of it, radically rebellious, and just go to something new and kind of buy some piece of land, be completely off grid, and start over. Like I don't believe that that works. What we are seeing is a natural decay of these old ways of doing things, a natural unraveling, like Joanna Macy brings, this concept of natural systems don't just collapse, they don't just fall apart, they start to lose coherence within themselves, and they start to slowly degrade and slowly shift. And from this composting process, from this manuring, from this fermenting process, all of these nutrients that were being used for this machine start to become available for something else, start to become available um, for the grassroots, for some undercurrent cultural movements, for this kind of underground grassroots blossomings, this sprouting of new consciousness, of new ways of doing things, new cultures, even new languages, even new gods, even new ideas beyond the stories that we were taught, that where we grew up in. And so there's this concept of that Vanessa de Machado brings. She's a Brazilian author, and she talked about hospicing modernity. So this idea that we are naturally, there's an old system that's dying, and our job is to both create a new system so that the people from the old system can transition, and also to hospice this system, to let this system die well. So making a place for the system to naturally degrade itself, but with dignity, with honor, also understanding what this system has contributed to humanity as it is today. All the the roads, the information age, AI as well. All of these are amazing contributions to humanity as a whole. It's just that we need to see that they had their time, and there's a natural, there's a natural
Transition.
transition that is just, it's just happening. It's okay. And I'm also not, I'm quite, I'm a Libra in my chart a lot, so I'm not into big extremes. I don't polarize. I always try to see both sides. I'm not saying fuck the system is wrong, we need to rebel against the system, fight the system. I'm seeing it has its purpose. It's clearly serving a lot of people. It's just not serving enough people now. It's just coming to a point where there's just a few people who are getting a lot of benefit, and everyone else is being sacrificed in the process. And that's just not sustainable. So it's naturally going to transition into something new. And it's about giving thanks and honoring what that was, but allowing something new to emerge, giving more energy as well, more attention to this new that is emerging locally, and starting to weave a web, a network of many local projects that are already living these alternatives, so that we can become more resilient as a network, and so that when this collapse comes more and more, we can actually feed ourselves from the compost, from the matter, from the organic matter of this decomposing system. And the people that are looking for something new, there's going to be a lot of spaciousness of like what comes next. And there's already these systems that are already creating something new. And it's about creating the right conditions to welcome in all this new energy that is coming in. And I think that's also what the documentary tries to show, is that we are not doomed. What we see as the end of the world that's being showed everywhere, and it's like, oh, all the young people, it's very sad to see. Lots of young people they don't have hope anymore. When you ask them, like, what do you see the future like? Is the future going to be better or worse than today? 90% at least will say that it's getting worse. So we have this doomerism culture, which is actually very much pushed by these technocratic agendas of control, because it's very pleasing to have people be completely hopeless, because then they don't self-organize, they don't cohere, they don't go towards a vision. So what I'm saying with this is that the documentary tries and really pushes this idea of like, actually, like, there is a beautiful, hopeful future ahead. And all we need to do is just to look around and see where manifestations, little sproutings of where that already is happening, and starting to get together and weave the network.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's I think I always think very positive about the future, and I think there is enough great-minded and well-minded people that'll join together, and and part of the beauty about podcasts and things like this is we can connect and spread the message, and documentaries and things like this. We're building community, we're building this understanding, we're building this awareness of possibility, and it's very positive. I do have one concern though, is that I'm going to say in quotation marks again, the Western world, as we have this privilege that we can make this decision. We're at the precipice of our economic drive and power that has provided us with the younger generation with the ability to have choice, with the ability to have, not to necessarily be doing something every day that means you cannot think and have time to think and philosophize and to write and to think about different ways of living. There is many parts of the world, probably the other 90% of the world, which are literally just struggling to find clean water to, just to feed themselves every day, to house themselves. And what do we say to those people that want to better their life? They want a mobile phone so that they know. And I lived in this fishing village in Madagascar, and it was fascinating because when I first moved there, there was only one guy that had a mobile phone, and he was like the center of the village, because every evening he could tell the guys, the fishermen, before they went off in their pirogues, because of course they didn't have engines. They sailed out on the offshore winds and they came back with the onshore winds. And he could tell them, okay, it's going to be offshore and then it's going to return onshore in the afternoon. And so that would mean for them a good fishing trip. In the past, before this chap had a mobile phone that could forecast the weather patterns like this, they were just going off on the offshore wind, and sometimes it would continue to blow offshore. So many of these Madagascar fishermen from the southwest, they never return, because that simple piece of knowledge meant that their community could retain good fishermen, could retain the pirogues, could family members were not lost at sea down and blown off, continuing into the Antarctic. And I'm not sure where I was going with this point now. I've lost my trail of thought, but it's I think, how do we explain to the rest? I mean, we call it, like, in quotation marks, in the West, we call it the third world or the developing world or whatever. How do we say to them, look, we did this. Maybe it's not a good idea for you to do the same thing, because of the expense of the planet. But what do we tell them to do, or how do we show them? How do we sort of say, well, you cannot have the same opportunities and rape the earth like we did for the last 200, 300 years. They're going to say, well, it's our opportunity now to better our health, better our lives, better our birth rates. It's a difficult paradigm.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's not up to us to tell them what to do. I think we've done that
Exactly.
enough.
Mhm.
Also, instead of underdeveloped, we could say overly exploited, because many of these countries are the most rich countries, and they've just been completely exploited by the global north, Europe, North America. Um, and of course, at this point, there is definitely a lot of damage being done by the most technological powers that are actually not the ones suffering the direct consequences of the actions. And that's the saddest part, is that um, if there's a couple of degrees going up, it's not the first world countries in the big cities in New York or something that are going to feel the direct impacts of that, because they have ACs, and because they have the whole system is set up so that you don't even have to experience that. But then it's that small village that has not contributed at all to this big climate crisis, that where the sea level is rising, and they're literally being displaced from the lands of their ancestors, because of the choices of burning fossil fuels like crazy for um, all the reserves of the planet. So it's very sad to see this reality, and I don't think it's up to us to tell anyone what to do at this point. Maybe to warn, or to kind of that it's not this way. It's like, oh guys, we went this way very, very deeply, and we now figure out actually it's not that way. So please don't follow our footsteps.
Yeah.
I
Said
understand.
from our golden towers, oh no, it's not a good way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's impossible to generalize the whole world here, because there's definitely many dynamics I can feel into
Hmm.
of what is happening around this. But I can also say that there are definitely still places of resistance which we don't get told about, especially in Africa, Southeast Asia. there's places that the Western mind hasn't yet
Mm.
uh, where it hasn't yet seeped into, and where there is still that deep ancestral connection with the land and with the culture. That lineage is still alive, and I believe that that lineage is way more resilient than any technological system that we have created, where like a solar storm comes and it might just completely destroy the internet, for example. And so I really I have more of this long term aspect, and this feeling of like all the ancient wisdom, the ancestral wisdom is still alive, even if it's asleep. It's embedded in our cells, and if we would only have a blackout like we had in last year, we had a blackout in Portugal, Spain, France, Germany for like 12 hours. If we would only have a blackout like that for like a week or a month, like
Mm.
everything would change drastically, and we would start to, at night we could actually look up and see the stars. um and when I think that, I really sense that the earth is fine. We don't need to save anything. We don't need to w- w- I think it's actually that idea that we need to kind of help, like even the idea of we need to help the third world develop. This idea is profoundly colonialist.
Mm.
We don't need to be saviors of anything. We just need to remember our place, actually, like remember our place as a human, which comes from humus. So this humanity, the same word where humus comes from, where compost comes from. So
Mm.
we are soil. This we don't need
Mm.
to save the world. We don't need to fix anything. And there's a lot of examples of this. I can name a few. I think they are very, very beautiful, because stories, they stick with us deeper than concepts. So there's a very powerful story about, there was a group of researchers, of engineers that went to an African village, and they found that a village where they didn't have access to water in the village, and the women would have to walk half an hour under the sun to go fetch water, to go get water from the nearby well, and they would have to go every day 1 hour to go and come back. So that was a lot of physical labor, a lot of time and energy just being used in going to get water. And so they really felt compassion for these women. They wanted to support them, so they created a system, um, a pump, so that the water from the well would be channeled straight to the village, and they would just have tap water straight from the village. And of course, this is very simple for them. This was like, this is so simple. We just want to help. They want to support. So they did this, and after 1 month, they came back, and the system were broken, and they were like, oh, they didn't understand what was happening. They thought it was animals or something. So they fixed the system. They put it there again, the pump. And 1 month later, they came back, and it was the same thing. It was still it got broken again. And then they start to ask, what's going on here? And turns out the women themselves from the village were breaking the system, because it was part of their culture. It was part of their daily living to go to the well to get the water. That was the only time that they had where it was only the women together talking in sisterhood, where they got to just be together and talk about the gossips of the village without the men having to know that. And that was part of their work. It was going their purpose in life. It was part of going to the water, coming back. And so this really like shifts our way of like what is helping, what is supporting, what is saving. This idea that we know better
Mm.
than a culture that has been there for forever. And so there's other examples of this as well that are a little bit more tragic. Like I think I saw this in a Local Futures documentary about Ladakh, which is a village in the north of India that used to be extremely well connected with its environment, which is a very harsh environment. It's a desert, but they were in complete harmony with the environment, through the local animals and the crops. They really managed to have like a system that worked for generations over generations. And what happened there was that because of modernization and globalization, these villages were seen as underdeveloped, and so the Western countries wanted to go there and support them to develop. And so, this philanthropic, rich, old, white woman, I think American woman, um, went there with her heart open. It's like, I'm gonna help this land, and she invested millions into building schools for them. And of course, what are they teaching in these schools? They're teaching English, they're teaching maths, they're teaching all the things that completely disconnected these young people from their elders. And only 5 years, 10 years into that, the kids started to say that they started to lose the sense of their own beauty, of their own honor, of their culture, and they start to see their culture as underdeveloped, because that's what they taught us in schools. It's your culture is underdeveloped. You need to help. You need help from our culture, which is superior. And so even went to the elders of that village, that when they went to interview the elders and ask, can you please teach us some of what you know, they would say, I don't know anything, just ask my kid, because he's in school and he knows more. So and of course that has completely also again eroded the social ties, the bonds, the connection with the land, with the culture. So and this is I think what's symptomatic about the Western way of doing things, is this idea that we know better. So I think that's what I want to leave, is that we don't know anything. We just need to remember to listen and be humble, because nature will tell us, like, life is the wisest teacher. And if we just listen to life in ourselves and in our environment, we're guided every step of the way, like a river. We just got to remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is a beautiful message, and I think it's probably a good point to leave there. And I really thank you for your time. And how can people get in touch with you, watch your documentary, or what is the sort of result that you would sort of appreciate from this?
Yeah, you can watch the documentary or be in touch with the film, and also the movement that has been sparked from it. You can go on Instagram, Re.Rural, so it's re.rural,
Mhm.
re.rural.
Yep.
You can also find my personal account under Heitor.poema, that is Heitor dot Poema. So
Brilliant.
go check that. That's my personal account on Instagram. And you can also have direct access. Right now, it's under private access to the community version before it goes out into festivals and media. And also, it's also sparked the movement, the documentary. So it's going to schools and universities, and it's also creating a very powerful regenerative network in Portugal of all the initiatives that have watched it, and all of a sudden they start recognizing each other. We recognize we're not alone. There's a lot of people doing this work. And so the next steps is also going to be to weave this network and create a more cohesive and resilient kind of a ground to sustain us. And you can check that out through going to baldio.eu. So that's BALDIO.eu. And yeah, you can also access the film through aldeiasdofuturo.com. So that's aldeiasdofuturo.com. That one I'm not going to spell because it's long, but it's a Portuguese word.
Well, I'm
It's
going to leave all these in the link, so people, basically, once you've listened to this podcast on Amazon or Apple or all of the what's the other one? Amazon, Apple, Spotify. Scroll down in the show notes in the summary, and the links will be all in the bottom there. You can click on them direct, or at least you can copy and paste and find out a little bit more about this subject that we've been talking to. And Heitor, it's so much passion. I love it. We need more beautiful people like you in the world with these types of visions and this type of passion. This is what drives our future, and I'm glad to see the younger generation that we're in good hands. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao.
charcoal, I need to concentrate. I need to concentrate. Stop the strain of thoughts, or I will be crashing on a couch. Won't have much to grouch about. Walking past another conductor makes me wanna build a fusion reactor. Starting just with the basic switch, connecting poles and energy. Mom says focus on geography, all the things I can learn with that machine. I need some fuel, I need a monster now. I'm the last to come, the cloud. Won't you go, star friend? Don't let it get burned. Don't let it get burned. Don't let it get all the way downtown with a little bit of luck, a little bit of luck. I'm gonna level up on no. I'm stuck with March, the fellow man. It's keeping me from my romance, testing history, the mystery of the century. Stop the train, I'm getting out. Stop the train, I'm getting out. Stop the train, I'm getting out. Stop the train, I'm getting out of order, out of order, out of order, out. 1, 2, 3, we are living on a rock.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.